Hey,
Yo,
can you hear me okay?
yeah, it's totally fine.
Welcome.
Good to be here.
Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, I set a reminder for myself like an hour ago, and I was like, oh, yeah. Went into head shaking mode for a second. I was like down a
Yes,
rabbit hole here.
someone I interviewed this week said that he was like, "Oh, I was about to go like do laundry or something," and then he's like, "Oh shit."
Yep.
I
Well, I
mean,
wasn't
I
gonna
get
do
it.
laundry. I was about to, yeah, go down a whole. I just found a piece of audio that made me start head spinning and like, oh shit. And I started, and I was like, dee 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 dee. Oh, stop.
I get it.
Back to Earth, B. All good. How are
What's
you?
up, B? I'm good. Today was a good day.
That's cool.
How's the weather out there?
Hasn't gotten too hot yet. I mean, it's still pretty chill.
Hmm.
Um, it's not quite June gloom either, so it's kind of in the
Right.
middle. Um, we had a few hot days, but it was like two or three, so it hasn't been
Yeah.
too
Same
crazy.
here. Hmm.
It's going to get more interesting as the temperatures rise, I suspect.
Yes. Yes, it will. I'm super nervous about like a blackout because everyone's running their ACs.
Of course, because everyone's home.
Mm-hmm. Oh well. Should we get started?
Go for it.
All right, this is Laura, aka the Sound Sommelier, talking with Brian B plus. Welcome. Thank you for taking the time.
All good. Happy to be here.
So I asked you this question when I interviewed you 2 years ago. It's how I start all my interviews. What's your earliest memory of hip hop? I want to see if it's different than what you answered the first time.
Yes, it's like this is a quiz on your own memory.
Even if
I
it might
mean,
be
I
interesting if
guess,
it's different.
yeah, maybe. I mean, I guess the first memory is the Sugar Hill Gang moment, I guess. Um, but you know, like that era, like that sort of coming out of that sort of post-punk era, whatever, like 82 to like 86, when it starts to be like, you know, we start finding out about Mantronics and Run DMC and this kind of stuff. Like those years, it was almost like cultural because there was like breaking was really a thing. You could actually see people breaking in Ireland. There was Irish breakers, DJ Mech, respect. But as far as yeah, I think Sugar Hill. Yeah, I think seeing Sugar Hill on Top of the Pops is probably a pretty early one. Why? What did I say the last time?
I
Some
think I
completely
think
different
no,
thing.
I think that's what you said the last time. I have to double
All right.
check. Um, when did you move to the US? What brought you here?
I first came to the U.S. in '88 on a student visa. It's a pretty normal thing for Irish kids, you know, of a certain age. Kids, I was in my early 20s. You can get a student visa to work for the summer in the U.S. So Irish kids would come, and I did it. I ended up in San Francisco, which is kind of the opposite of what most kids do, which is go to like Boston or New York or Chicago.
Mhm.
But I had a friend who was a filmmaker there, and my friend Paul McCarthy, my homie from long time ago, convinced me, let's not do what all the other cats are doing. Let's go see somewhere different where there isn't so many Irish folks or whatever. So we ended up there in '88, and yeah, it was mind-boggling. I mean, I remember before going, like having a certain amount of access, and it would take time sometimes, but it also felt like it was '88 was like the summer of, it was really the kind of moment, the kind of native tongues moment, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? It was like the first, um, like the De La record was out, the Jungle Brothers record was out, the second BDP record comes out, and it's kind of, yeah, I mean, from, you know, that it got very serious very quickly. And
Did
then,
you have
go ahead.
sorry? Did you have a lot more access to hip hop in San Francisco than you did in Ireland, or?
Oh my God, like we didn't, yeah, I mean, in Ireland was difficult. You know, there would be people, there was tapes circulating, of course. People would find things. I think, I think I can say, not sure if I heard Boys in the Hood before I went to San Francisco, but I remember hearing it in San Francisco. I mean, there was just, yeah, there was just so many more records. Um, I think it was 88. I think Public Enemy had played in Ireland that summer. They were booked in Dublin and played a gig at McGonagall's and then at this thing called the Trinity Ball, which there's bootlegs going around of. I remember seeing Sinead O'Connor in the crowd. You know, and Sinead O'Connor had that song with MC Light. I mean, you know, that period now is all kind of rose colored glasses or whatever. But yeah, definitely had a lot more access in 88 in San Francisco than I did in Ireland, for sure. You know, I mean, that's basically, I was supposed to bring back money to pay for school, and I ended up bringing back records.
Yeah.
You know.
Happens.
Oops. Yeah. My parents were delighted.
I'm sure. Who or what, kind of pivoting a little bit, who or what inspired you to take up photography? Was that a thing
In the
before
first
you
place,
came?
yeah, my friend Paul was always really, really good. And weirdly enough, as a result, I never thought of myself as being any good at photography at all, actually, because he was just so good. And then in art school, I started to think about photography as a way of working with ideas. I was more interested in ideas, but of course I was listening to the music as well. But I just never thought the two things would come together. You know what I mean?
Right.
But yeah, like basically that was it. Like I started making photos in my undergrad. It was like photo text pieces, like idea pieces, collages, that kind of thing, appropriating stuff, looking at advertising, looking at like official imaging of Ireland, thinking about the Irish landscape and how it means, and that kind of stuff. Really wasn't until I started working on what became It's Not About a Salary that I even started to photograph people, if you can believe that. Didn't even photograph people. I was on a different kind of project. So yeah, crazy.
Was it because you didn't have any interest in people yet, or you just didn't really
Still don't.
gravitate?
Still don't.
I don't believe that at all.
No, I mean, like the kind of art that I was interested in was more about like systems and kind of belief systems and thinking about like ascribing meaning to things that, you know, or you know, understanding the history of things and places. Yeah, there was also a kind of there was an idea circulating there. You know, the representation itself as an idea was being problematized in a good way, actually, but in art school while I was there. So it was a lot of it was thinking about like, you know, what does it mean to photograph somebody who you don't know or who you don't have some kind of an arrangement with, or what does it mean to look at the Bowery, for example, as Martha Rossler was doing, on how the Bowery's been photographed, and try to understand, you know, how those photographs mean and how they other people and how they, you know. And so, yeah, I mean, I was on a different kind of project, so I wasn't really photographing people. I didn't even really think of myself as a photographer. I was thinking, I was more interested in like images, like what you can do with images. And this was just a quick way to reproduce images.
The outcome as opposed to the act of it, yeah.
Yeah.
When did you realize you could take pictures for a living?
That's quite a bit later. That's about 3 years ago. You know what I mean? I think I'm gonna make it, but it was like I think I actually had to deal with the reality of making photographs, pay my living, before I realized I could actually do it. So, do you know what I mean? There was a period like after I finished school, basically I went on this. I got this fellowship to go to New York for like a month to be part of this thing that this woman called Deborah Willis had organized at Columbia University, which was amazing. And while I went there for that, I was assured my job would be there when I got back, which I was working in a camera store. And I was there 2 weeks, and my friend called me and said, like, they were already replacing you. Um, so when I went back then, I just said, you know what, like, if I'm ever going to do this, I have to do it now. Like, I'm not going to take another job. I hated the job, to be honest. I really did.
Hmm.
I was never cut out to be an employee kind of. I know it's weird to say it like that, you know what I mean? But I'm not. I mean, I'm an
Not
employee of
weird.
the
There's a lot of
University of
people.
California now. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so just a bunch of stuff happened at the job anyway. So I was like, all right, cool. It wasn't like some heroic thing or anything, but I did sort of take it seriously as a kind of a thing, like, you know, if you're going to do this, you might as well just do it. You know, don't wait to, you know, I think a lot of people get into this kind of like, well, I should assist somebody who does it. And then I should, you know, work my way. And I don't know, for whatever reason, I just said, like, you know, if that's what you want to do, if you want to be a photographer and live by making images, you should do it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. And then, but then it took a while, man. Honestly, I mean, it's never really feels like a real job in the sense that, obviously I work for the University of California now, and it's different, but, you know, for 20 years there, yeah, you could be on Zippo really quick. You know, like, many's a hungry month was had. You know, just, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
a part of it as well is like, you know, professional practices. Like, I think there's been times in my life where I would have been better advised to get representation or this kind of thing. But for better or worse, I've always thought, like, I need to, in order for me to be able to do this at the level that I want to be able to do it, I should also foster the idea of doing personal projects, always, you know, being open to the notion of things other than just directly making, damn, somebody wants to know about introducing, that's funny. But thinking about things in terms of like just jobs. I'm happy to talk about introducing. I'm not saying it's funny like that, but
No, it's funny because you've talked about it a lot.
I always do. It's a I don't know. It's one of those.
That's not one of the pictures I chose. That's not one of the pictures I chose. Brian, just not to interrupt you, but I don't know if you see what I see, but your picture has gone a little fuzzy. I don't know if you care. I can hear you fine.
I can hear you. Yeah, totally.
Okay. Sorry, did you want to continue or?
No, go ahead.
What would you say is your ideal setting for a shoot or an ideal subject? Do you have, like, going into something being like, oh, I hope it's this?
I mean, it's a funny one. I'm game. If there's an interesting exchange to be had, an interesting story to be told, if there's an interesting vibe happening, if there's interesting music happening, if there's something compelling in the air, and that can be from the smallest particle to the largest event, and yeah, give me some, you know, 5 a.m. the half an hour before the sun comes up, or give me, you know, 5:30 p.m. the last half an hour after the sun goes. Give me some mixed light, and I'm off to the races. Yeah, that's it. I could get lost there and never come back. Yeah.
Last, like, photography question. For any aspiring photographers who might be watching, what are your thoughts on the newer cameras being released? Are you kind of like a creature of habit? Do you stick with one, or do you like to try out new ones? Or
I would say in my crew, I'm a slow adopter for sure. Like, I'm not the first cat in the crew who's got the new shit. We have some savage fast adapters in the crew. Much respect to Coleman, Caesar, Randy, Mike Park, all the homies, Jerry. But no, I like that. I mean, if there's things that you can, I'm not averse to. If there's things, you know, every camera has things it can do that other cameras doesn't. It's just up to you to find the one that you're best able to exploit. I mean, basically that's what it is. It's a tool. you know, there's people that swear by medium format digital cameras. There's people like myself. I'm less inclined. I mean, I have my old brick, you know, Nikon D850. I shoot video with it too. You know what I'm saying? I still have a Hasselblad. You know, I still shoot my analogs. I don't know. I'll shoot whatever. I carry a Fuji, shoot that sometimes. Haven't really found the best camera to replace the Fuji GA645, which is an analog camera that I love very much. I haven't found a digital equivalent to that. I thought that's what Fuji were doing, but turns out it isn't. Yeah, there's some tech shit for you.
Thanks. So how did you get involved in the hip hop scene in the US? What was your first like dip in there?
Well, I mean, I was going to shows when I come up here in '88. Like, I was very lucky. I lived in a kind of small group of artists in the Mission District in San Francisco, and the guy who was me and my friend, and one of the guys who lived there as well in the same building with us, said to me, you know, he said, like, because I forget what record had just come out, but we like went into the Hate to like Tower Records and bought it. And when we come back, he says, you know, that's cool and all, you guys got the brand new record or whatever, but like, you could buy your records in Hunters Point where you work, because I was working for Starving Students, and which is a moving company, you know, and right next to where you cash your checks, there's a record store. It'd be better for you guys to support the one in the community that actually this music comes out of. And we were like, wow, that's fucking absolutely. So then we started buying records at Hunters Point, and from then, I don't know, like I felt like I was involved in hip hop in Ireland, but as a fan, and I was as a fan really still, you know. It's just in LA, then I started this project, which went on to become It's Not About a Salary, basically. So that's a few years later. Yeah. That's like 91. And we'll say I first come here in 88. So I went back, obviously, and came back again.
Right. When I interviewed you a couple years ago, your book, Ghost Notes, Music of the Unplayed, had just come out. The project's still receiving a lot of attention. How do you feel about the impact that it's made?
Well, it's obviously it's very flattering. For the most part, people really, you know, I think it was a helpful book for some folks to grow ideas out of. In retrospect, to me, it's difficult. It's flawed. It's, you know, I mean, it is what it is. Like, it's a weird snapshot, you know what I mean? Like, somehow. But one thing that was an unanticipated and kind of amazing thing that came out of the book, which I feel very happy about, but really humbled by in a little bit of a way, which is that before Black Lives Matter, there was an organization called Stolen Lives, and Stolen Lives is like a kind of a directory of police murder in communities of color in the country, you know, under you know, questionable circumstances, right. Which to me, all police murder is questionable. And Stolen Lives was amazing. It was a nationwide project, and I met somebody who was high up in the organization, and they said, like, oh, you know, that came from your book. And I was like,
wow.
Yeah, but yeah, in the back of the book, one of my co-authors, Reagan Kelly, put together this. Well, we put it together. We used an archive that had existed in LA since the 70s, which was this organization run by this man called Michael Zinzun, who's an old Black Panther, and he ran this organization called Campaign Against Police Abuse, CAPA, and he was keeping a record, basically, of the things that the police were doing in LA. And then we just adopted, because it was one of the things that was difficult about It's Not About a Salary. It's like, okay, it's kind of okay to say, like, I mean, I think people get it. There's no question. If you're talking about fuck the police, people understand what you mean. But for people outside of LA, I anticipated, but even outside of the country especially, it's difficult to understand the level of, you know, the role that the police play in these kinds of communities, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, obviously, it's still, you know, this is still something this country is failing to deal with.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah. So that was one of the things. That was one of the impacts of the book that I have to say, I was super. Yeah, I was unhappy about what's going on, that we should even still have to be dealing with this, or we. Right. But anyways, yeah. So that's one of the things that come out of the book.
If I show you some photos, can you share the stories behind them?
For sure.
All right.
As best as I can, as best I can remember.
So just first off, for people that aren't aware, can you explain what Ghost Notes are?
Ghost Notes is the name of the book, but Ghost Notes is the unplayed hits that happen in between the beats in a rhythm, basically. So it's the sound of the human body interacting with the set drums, you know, which is a machine, a piece of technology. Actually, it's an automation in and of itself, in the sense that, you know, like before there was set drums, there was people, you know, one guy would play the hi-hat, one guy would play the snare, one guy would play the kick, you know, and then they all got shrunk into this thing. And so in this kind of interaction with this multiple bodies implied in the drum set, other things start to happen. And it's the difference between hearing, you know, the band at the local bar at the wedding playing Funky Drummer, and hearing Clyde Stubblefield playing the Funky Drummer. Is just kind of, you feel differently. And they could be playing literally the same beats, but it's just all that other stuff is what's interesting. And to me, that's kind of what photography is too, you know, in the sense that it's kind of unimplied, like moments in between, little spaces in between. So there you go. Too complicated, but.
All right. So why the cover?
Well, you should open it all the way, and so we can see both sides of it, because that's really the thing. Yeah, that's the cover. Well, we tried to figure it out. It's an interesting shape, and I don't know, in some absolutely poetic way, everything I kind of wanted to talk about is in that photo as well. It's a perfect emblem. It's a perfect emblem for what's inside the covers, really. Jamaica's important part of the story, obviously. The Caribbean in general, but Jamaica specifically.
Eazy-E and Bone Thugs.
Bone Thugs and Harmony. The Chronic had just come out, or was about to come out. And Eazy-E, who was a friend, I had done the record cover for 187 and he wanted to learn how to do photography, and so he had called me up and asked me if I would help him out. And he had this new band, Bone Thugs and Harmony. So by the time we actually got to do it, the other agenda was that the diss video hadn't come out yet. But he was upset because Dre was presenting himself as this kind of weed figure, when in fact the real smoker in the group, as far as Arab was concerned, was Eazy-E. So he asked me to meet him downtown. We took some photos together of Bone Thugs, which ended up being used on their first EP or something. And then we went to Norwalk, to his mother's house, and then he took a fucking grip of weed out of the trunk of his car and brought it into the living room, and we set up a light, and everybody smoked except me. And it was me and Eric were the last ones left. Me and Eazy-E were the last ones. Eric Wright were the last ones left standing. My assistant was asleep. Bone Thugs and Harmony were asleep.
Must have at least caught a contact high.
I mean, yeah, I guess. I have other ones where he was doing crazy stuff. The idea was we were going to shoot for High Times. But then I don't know what happened exactly. I never heard about it. And then the next thing I heard, I saw him a few times after that, but then, it wasn't long. Maybe a year later is when, when we found out that he was sick.
Yeah. Leon Ware and George Clinton.
Backstage at a show in downtown LA called That 70s Soul Show, put on by a friend of ours, Art Don't Sleep.
Oh, I know
And
him.
yeah, and there was I mean, it was epic night of from Seu George to Ndugu to James Gadson to Sly Stone to Zap Mama to wow, there was so many people, and they were photographed separately. They were chatting together. They had fun, and I do have some photos of them together, but those were two separate portraits. That just when I was laying out the book, I really liked how they sat across from each other, and I just imagine there's so much music between those two people right there. That's insane.
It could be
And
in
to
the
me,
same photo.
oh, they could. I mean, it's against the same background or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's just too much music right there. That's just like epic leap of a lot of music is covered in that between those two frames. So
Love this Danger Mouse.
you know what's funny is I think if I remember correctly, and we'd have to ask Eric on this, if I have it actually, it's entitled as Danger Mouse. The funny thing is, I don't think it is Danger Mouse. I think it's
No,
Doom. It's Doom inside Danger
that would
Mouse's
make
outfit
sense. Mm-hmm.
because
When they were doing
he
the
was too
Danger
little.
Doom.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
because Danger Mouse is a tall dude, and Doom's
Yeah, he
not that
is.
tall. I mean, he's that small, but he's not that tall. Not as tall as
Mm-hmm.
other dude. And I think that's him. Yeah, and I have it labeled wrong in the book, which is fun, which makes me laugh now. But anyways, yeah,
It makes for a good story.
I guess.
So this one breaks my heart a little bit. Mr. Withers.
Oh yeah, yeah, man. Yeah, Bill Withers, pretty. I don't know. I mean, I had one level of respect for him, just as a. I've always thought of him as a kind of. There's a Marley thing, it's a Marley thing. It's like a Bob thing. I have that kind of common man, countryman's wisdom, kind of proverbs, almost like in the music, and a gentle way with words, where it's like, yeah, it makes you feel warm, like you're just like, wow, listen to what he just said.
And the way he says
And then I
things.
saw the documentary, Still Bill, which is made by a cousin of a friend, but and which is one of my favorite music documentaries of all time. And if you haven't seen it, please.
I have multiple times.
Yeah. And so then we organized a screening of it just because we could, and we had friends with a cinema in downtown LA. And then another friend of mine got asked to do something about Howard Bingham, who was Muhammad Ali's photographer. And she needed somebody to shoot some interview stuff. And she called me, and I said, of course. And then she said, when I tell you who it is, you're going to bug. And then it was, it was Bill Withers. And Bill Withers and Howard Bingham were best friends.
Oh.
And so it was a wonderful interview, actually. It was really beautiful. I mean, obviously, to see somebody that's that heavy speaking poetically about their best friend is kind of about as, you don't have to pay me money for that. That's for sure. I mean, it was beautiful. And then at the end, I asked him, it was cool. I take a photo. And I don't, I could count in one hand the amount of people that actually are counting the frames when you're shooting. People are thinking about other things. They're not thinking about like, okay, that's number 7. He's got to do 3 more or whatever it is. You know what I mean? But he knew it was a Hasselblad, and he called it. He said, like, this is your last frame. And it really was. And that was it. As soon as it hit, he just, kapow, he was out of there. I forget. He said something really
profound.
I don't remember. Well, no, it was funny. He's completely offhand, but really funny at the same time. But yeah, that's Bill Withers, man.
Do you know if that interview is accessible anywhere right now?
It would be on the Lucy Awards site, and it would be the Lucy Award tribute to Howard Bingham. I don't know if they're on the site. I'm not sure. But the Lucy Awards, it's a photo awards, an amazing photo awards thing that happens every year where they, you know, they give awards to photographers for being photographers.
I mean,
Yeah, it's good.